Hello, everyone. It is the Prophet Michael David, aka Aries, and I hope everyone's having a great day. All right, as you can see by the thumbnail, today is going to be all about my namesake, the Archangel Michael, and specifically, the thumbnail was I was looking for a thumbnail that I could use for this video that wasn't the other one with the scales that I had used before, but something unique. I was just trying to look for something that called to me, and that drawing or that whatever is an actual AI generated. And the interesting thing about it is the AI incorporated a lot of aspects of Michael that most people don't think about it. Someday I'll do like a full blown dissertation probably on that picture itself, but it's very cool. Okay, so for the majority of this video, we're going to go over the meaning of the name Michael and the mistranslations. But one of your main questions is like, who exactly is Michael and why is he so famous and is he so favored by God? And it's pretty much answers the question. You can define Michael, the Archangel Michael, as being like the most favored son of God. We're all children of the Lord, but and you might say, well, mothers are supposed to love all their children the same and unconditionally, but let's don't be naive. Let's be honest. Mothers have their favorites, and uh, God's favorite, the Lord's favorite, is the Archangel Michael. He is the most favored son of God. All right, here we go. What is the number one most mistranslated way of defining the name Michael? And that is he who is like God. It's very common, but it's such a bad mistranslation that it's almost the opposite of what the name's meant to mean. Number two, and this is more if you go back in time to the ancients, but it's the mistranslation is he who is next to El, or he who stands next to El. And again, El is God in this case. But the reason why it's a mistranslation is that he who stands next to El, or he who is next to El, is Metatron. And this is the name that is why a lot of people confuse Michael with Metatron, or people link Michael with Metatron. Still a bad translation, an ancient translation, not as bad as the first one, but still bad. Now, thirdly, some people that think they know a lot about the Archangel Michael will say that his name is not really a name, it's a question. It's a rhetorical question, and that question is, who is like God? And again, that's closer, but not the total thing. To really, really get the true full meaning of Michael, named after the Archangel Michael, you actually have to go to Islam. Because in Islam, they have a saying, Allah Akbar, or Akbar Allah, which also poorly translated means God is great. So to many, many Westerners, they translate that as being God is great. Like, yeah, God is great, everything. But to Muslims, at least true Muslims, that's not what it means. What Allah Akbar truly means is that Allah means the one God, aka the one true creator God, and Allah is infallible. Allah is a straight line. Allah is the truth. Allah is the definition of efficiency. Allah is the best at everything. And there is a very good English word for that situation, but it's not great. And that word is supreme. So, what Allah Akbar really means is not God is great, it means Allah is supreme. Allah is the best at everything. So now, if you're paying attention, you can see what I'm going to say yet next, going back to Michael, is the name Michael is a question, is a rhetorical question, And it's the rhetorical question that the Muslims answer all the time. For the true translation of the name Michael is not he who's like God or he who stands next to God or anything like that. The true translation of Michael is who is as supreme as God. Rhetorical question, crickets chirping, and then a few seconds later, the Muslims say, Allah Akbar. God is supreme. So, in the future, if this ever comes up in conversation about the true meaning of the Archangel's Michael's name or Michael in general and everything, don't ridicule people or tell them that they're sinners or whatever if they don't know the true meaning of the name. Just cite this example, and since you now know the true meaning of the name, and tell them the true meaning of the name and why. Okay, just one more tidbit about the Archangel Michael and how he applies to this time of year. Well, number one, September 29th is always Michaelmas. That's his day. It's one of the quarter days, other being Christmas, and then there's one in spring and summer. They're always around the solstices. But I misspoke last video about how in the ancient days during the Jewish temples that the high priest would utter, God's real name, personal name, not real name. She has many real names, but personal name on Rosh Hashanah. But I misspoke. That's actually on Yom Kippur, but both are related. Both are called the high holy days of Judaism, or it's the 10 days of atonement between the start of Rosh Hashanah and then Yom Kippur. And that's their Jewish New Year. That being said, I knew there was something that had to do with Michaelmas, but it's not Rosh Hashanah. But if you look on Wiki and the earliest and latest dates of Yom Kippur are September 14th is the earliest and October 14th is the latest. And so Michaelmas would fall in the mean and average of all Yom Kippurs, just as my Taurus birthday is the mean and average of all Mother's Days, which really isn't Jewish, but since God is the great mother, it's a big deal. And then my Aries birthday is April 5th, which is the mean and average of all Peshachs, Passovers. And then, but I saw, even though they're called the high holy days, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are still defined by Pesach, Passover. I looked it up that the start of Rosh Hashanah is 163 days, digital root 1, 163 days after Pesach, and then Yom Kippur is 10 days later, roughly. Also relating to Judaism, but tis that season. As I've said before, Archangel Michael is the prince and protector of the faith of Judaism. It's not a religion. It's not really culture. It's just a large family that made a deal with God. Actually, it's a branch of a family that made a deal with God. That being said, what most people don't know, but I've talked about in previous videos, that the solar representation of the Archangel Michael is a star called Aldebaran. In the ancient times, it was called Aldebaran, probably Michael Debran, and it is the fiery red eye of the constellation Taurus, the one that's eternally fighting Orion. Yeah, check it out. I didn't know it either, but yeah, the Archangel Michael is also associated with the constellation of Taurus. Okay, here's a couple more random tidbits about the Archangel Michael before I sign off. The farther you go back in time, in the recent time, Archangel Michael is known for having his red sash and his shield, which says Quis et Deus, which is like the bad translation of his name, who is like God, and also that fiery sword. If you go back farther in time, he still has the shield. It just doesn't have the inscription because it's before the Romans, and that sword is a sword, but it's not a fiery sword. If you go back even farther than that, that sword turns into a spear, and that red sash that he has turns into a red banner upon that spear, and he still has the shield. If you go back even farther than that, he still has the spear with the red banner on it, but that shield turns into a branch. And there's really only one branch that branch can be a tree of, and that's an olive branch. So in the oldest iterations of Michael, he's basically a guy carrying around a spear with a red banner and a branch. But then if you go back even older than that, you know, think of like old kung fu movies where they turned like farming instruments into weapons. What happens when you take a spear and you like hammer out the head of it and maybe curve it a little bit? You turn it into a spade or a shovel. He still has the banner and he still has the olive branch. And so in the very, very oldest iterations of Michael, he's just a guy that's going out to plant an olive tree. And then what is he using the banner for? Well, olive trees, cultivating them has been very difficult. I'm not an expert on this, but I know they have to graft them. So they cut off certain branches and they tie them to other branches. So in the oldest iterations of Michael, he's just basically a tree farmer. He plants olive trees. Wow, that might have been the longest continuous clip I ever did. So signing off here. As always, rule number 1, do not touch each other without another person's consent, aka do not hurt each other. And rule number 2, it's all about honesties. Lies are ticked down, aka try not to lie. All right, I'll talk to you all later.